So today we're going to talk about what the new Corrode meta will be. Now there won't be any videos in the next 3 or 4 days after this one because I'm going on holiday, but deal with it. Let's dive into Corrode, shall we? So let's start off, and I'm going to save us all some time here because we don't need to go through every single controller because there's only a couple we need to talk about because the others aren't that good for one. And number two, even though you can't one-way this kind of stuff here, it does not matter because this Omen agent, you may have heard, is quite good and has a very high pick rate in pro play right now. So yeah, I think that Omen is the best controller here on this map, at least for your, normal dome smokes. I think Omen is just very good, right? There's just a lot of good things that you can do with him. I'm not really, breaking too much news, I don't think there, right? Whether it's like early paranoias out towards A, because you need to win this fight early, whether it's TPing across over here and then Omen flashing all of elbow essentially, and doing that and just absolutely destroying everyone, whether it's smoking this off and TPing into it and then going from there, right? Like all of it is good, and Omen just will be very good on this map. Now when it comes to the other controllers, I mean Brim, there's a mid on this map, so don't bother. Clove will probably be still okay in ranked if you want to play Clove, and Harbor, it's Harbor, let's be real. Astra, I think, is playable. Like, if you want to play Astra, I think it's fine, but it's probably not as good as Omen. I think the one advantage Astra has, of course, a lot of people have talked about these paper walls and that we might get, some spamming in here. Well, maybe if, we do get full cringe and the spike is planted somewhere here on A and people are just, fully going cringe with it, that maybe an Astra ult would help you, right? That could maybe save you from some of the cringe stuff that might happen to you if you don't have this, right? So Astra, I think, could find some value. It's not going to be bad, but I think Omen is a better option. But now let's talk about a very unique controller who I think definitely will be meta somewhat on this map, and that is Viper, because Viper, I think, just has a lot of good setups here, right? There's a lot of different walls on A that you can do. I personally like these kind of ones, or at least I'm interested by these kind of walls, right? So this one, so it kind of helps you get into A main, at the start here, by masking you somewhat, but then it kind of gives you this, like, double option, right? Where you could go this way if you wanted to and maybe like smoke that off and come this way, or you could go this side of the wall, right, and come in this way and come in towards elbow instead, right? I'm kind of interested by these kind of walls. Not sure if that will end up being the meta wall here on A, but it honestly doesn't matter whether it's just something basic like this, right, that just goes across and just for post plant you just come in towards elbow and it cuts off this and this, right? Like if it's just that, if it's something very simple like that, honestly, it doesn't matter, because there's also good walls towards B. My point is, there will be some good Viper setups here on this map that you will want to use, basically. That's ultimately what I am trying to say here, right? And the same is true on this B site as well, right? Whether it's just something like this. Again, helping you kind of get into the early part of B main here. And then, just a wall that lets you lurk all the way up potentially to elbow, right? And again, if they are playing like a no sentinel comp or something, or don't have that sentinel utility here, I mean, they could be in a lot of trouble, right? Like, this is very, very deep now that I'm walking into, a very, very deep part of the map. So, yeah, whether it's Viper walls on A, B, honestly, it doesn't matter. I think they're gonna be pretty good. Think of this as very similar to Split in that sense, where there's good setups on both sides of the map. And then with your orb, again, like, if you just want to, throw your orb in mid, that's fine. If you want to throw your orb, if you've got a Viper wall set up on B, and maybe you put your orb here on A to create some pressure, whether you save it for post plant, again, all fine. I think that Viper will be good, though, especially on this attack side. Now, on defense side, there's going to be a couple different walls that you can do, right? One is, like, lining up this kind of box with this one just here. A wall like that would mean that, if you're the attackers here coming in towards A, well, you got to cross this Viper wall 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right? Doesn't seem a lot of fun. You could just do walls, that kind of go in towards mid, whether it's, a more aggressive wall like that one, or if we come over towards B, you can do ones that, maybe are a bit shallower in mid, but, cover off kind of the B main choke point as well, right? So something kind of like this, right? Whatever it is, honestly, I don't really care. The point is that Viper is going to be good on this map, some way or another, right? With even just some very basic setups like this one, that's fine, right? Like that's pretty good. I like that, right? That's cool. And so I think the Viper will just be very, very good. Okay, now let's talk about the Jewelist. So my favorite Jewelist, I think, on this map is definitely Yoru, who I think should be a pretty common pick here on this map. Not only is Yoru very good, but I think he's very good on this map, right? The one thing that maybe isn't quite as good for Yoru as it is maybe on some other maps is the defensive rotates, right? Like, if you want to throw out this gate crash, you do kind of, you know, have to be all the way back here. So, you know, going from completely one side to the other side maybe isn't as easy. You might think it's possible, you know, from kind of B mid, you know, through that way, but it's actually not, because this is a step, right? So, like, if you just throw it here, you're just gonna hit this. So you can't quite manage that. So maybe not, you know, quite as good as on the defensive, like, rotate TPs, although there are some, like, if you've pushed mid here and, you know, you've ended up in a very aggressive spot, which I think you will want to do as Yoru on this map. You know, I do think you want to be pushing mid as Yoru quite a lot. There will be some TPs that, you know, can get you, you know, pretty far out, you know, for instance, like this one, you know, will take you all the way back to the A site, right? Like, so there are some that you can do, but it's maybe not, like, the absolute best map for that. But I do think that on attack side, that, like, there's just a lot of positions that you could feasibly rotate in as a Yoru, basically, right? Whether it's, like, coming over here, like, you have options here, right? Like, you could send a TP from back there, that, you know, it goes into this room. You could send it here instead, right? Like, there's a lot of options. You can get TPs all the way down there. You can get them down here. And I just think there's just potential here, particularly when, you know, I'm talking about playing double controller already, and maybe, you know, using some of those Viper setups, you know, as ways of setting up your Yoru, right? Like, if you had the wall that just went across like this in a straight line, you know, maybe a Yoru TP into this back corner, well, maybe that's actually fairly safe, right? Especially with a flash. Like, as long as I flash across here, like, you know, like this with a wall going up here, can't be seen from that room, like, might actually be pretty safe, you know, and then I can come around. So I think particularly in kind of like an Omen Viper situation, that Yoru really could find some decent value on this map just overall. So Yoru is my preferred option for Jewelist, but if you wanted to go, you know, for something else, or if you particularly wanted to play double Jewelist, I do think that Neon is an option. Again, I don't think anyone is as good as Yoru, but I think, you know, Neon could do some interesting things here if you really wanted to get aggressive. I think the Neon stuns could be okay, particularly in some of the, you know, closer corner areas of the map. But, you know, you could picture like a Neon, you know, doing stuff like this and sliding in around here, right? Like, it seems feasible that Neon, you know, particularly like pressuring heavy towards A lot of the time, could be, you know, pretty decent. You know, essentially, if you went for like a Neon double initiator comp and didn't play the Viper, right? Like this Neon wall across here might do a similar sort of job, you know, in terms of, you know, doing stuff like that and getting deep into the site, right? Like, again, could be okay. So I don't hate Neon. With Raze, I feel like there are parts of the map that are just like the whole A site, you know, maybe apart from like elbow here, but there's just some bigger areas where I'm not sure Raze will be as valuable. There will be parts of the map that I think you can, you know, for instance, if you're trying to take, you know, this part of the map, like, you know, Raze is going to be pretty good for that, right? Like, so there are parts that I think Raze will be good, but also parts where you might struggle a little bit more, and so I'm not as high on Raze, but I think Raze is playable. When it comes to Jett, I just don't think there's enough verticality for Jett to really, you know, make sense. If you're wondering, you can get to heaven if you come on top of this box and, you know, do that. Like, that is one thing that you can do with one-up draft. Just quickly show you as well that it is, like, somewhat possible to, you know, use knives through this window. I know a lot of people must have been thinking about that at first, but, like, you know, you can do it a bit, but not for very long, so yeah, I don't think this is really a Jett map. And then when it comes to the other Jewelists, I know that they've, you know, buffed Whale or whatever, but I don't think it's really enough. And, you know, they're nerfing Phoenix and Reyna as well. So, and ISO is always kind of like, yeah, maybe if you want to, like, it's probably going to be okay, but not the best option. Now let's come to the initiators. And so far we've got Omen, Yoru, Viper as kind of the three agents that I would look to play a lot on this map. And you want a recon, you know, you want one of Fade or Sova, and this is where it gets quite interesting because I think they're both pretty good. I right now would probably slightly lean Fade. I think that Fade, there's, you know, going to be a ton of good Fade eyes that you can potentially do in a ton of different areas. There might be some parts of the map that, you know, are a little bit more difficult overall, but there will be enough good stuff. And I think the reason I'm slightly leaning Fade is because I think in the kind of mid part of the map here, I think just having that extra Prowler, you will find good value from that, essentially. I think that extra Prowler will give you the necessary value that makes picking Fade a good option, essentially. Because I think on both sides, whether it's attack or defense, you know, kind of whether it's reactive, you know, and again, you've got obviously a lot of Odin spamming potential on this map, so you know, like Fade or Sova could go really, really hard on this map, you know, kind of with some of the Fade haunts and Sova dots that you could do, particularly early on. You're going to get a lot of success if you spend a bit of time with it. But yeah, I think both Fade and Sova are good, like really good. I'm slightly leaning Fade because I do think that the second Prowler will be decent value. When it comes to Gecko, I think that Gecko could be okay on this map. I think that, you know, like little dizzy flashes like this over the top, you know, look pretty good in terms of spotting out what's going on early towards B, right? Like things like that could be okay. And then, you know, kind of coming back to mid and maybe, you know, like fighting mid like so, right? With a dizzy flash over the top, again, getting it into a safe position to potentially reclaim, right? Like there are decent things here. I think that Gecko could be okay. I'm not sure he fits like my personal vision for the map, right? Of playing the double controller with the Viper. I think if you were playing more of an aggressive double initiator, maybe Gecko could be a pretty decent option, I think. And I would say the same for KO as well, right? Where is KO gonna be like useless? No, right? KO's gonna be pretty good. There's gonna be some things that, you know, are just fairly good, right? Whether it's kind of like a send A site here, you know, where you can flash over the top from both sides. You know, and potentially, you know, send people in. You know, whatever it is, like, yeah, KO is going to be okay, I think, again. But, I don't think I would play KO. But if you wanted to, you know, if you're a KO player, again, I think KO is pretty decent on every map, to be honest. I think it's quite hard to completely design a map that KO is useless for. But, yeah, he's going to be fine. When it comes to Breach, I think, again, like, you know, are there some decent things that Breach can do? Yeah. You know, but again, I don't think Breach is really fitting kind of my vision of how this map is likely to play out. Again, it's not that Breach is going to be useless. You could play Breach, you know, if you wanted to, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it would be my, you know, personal choice, but you know, like it's probably going to be a pretty decent ult, right? Like there's going to be some decent things that you can do with Breach, but again, I don't think he's really fitting what my vision for this map is. And then when it comes to Skye and Teo, I think you're probably just gonna have better options, to be honest, than those two right now without having the refreshable utility. And you know, like I said, KO, Breach, Gecko, Fade and Sova are both already very good. Like, you know, I think that those options probably just are giving you a bit more in general anyway these days. And so now let's talk about the Sentinels, and let's start actually with Chamber, who actually I think does have some pretty good setups, right? Like this one here. You know, with the TP out here, potentially, you know, allowing you to fight early in B main, potentially get, you know, very deep in B main, you know, could be very, very strong indeed with a very safe TP coming in here as well, right? I think here out towards mid, maybe not quite as strong, but, you know, not bad. I think, you know, you could go if you have a very aggressive playstyle with a Chamber. I think that's fine. Again, I think that Yoru is probably a little better for aggroing here in mid. Yeah, I think the Chamber is usable. I don't think Chamber is that bad. If you want to play Chamber, I think you could find some decent value on this map. Now let's come to Cipher. And I should say, really, that the Sentinel class is probably the one I struggled with the most. Because I do think that there are a lot of decent options, right? Like, I do think, you know, a lot of the Sentinels potentially, you know, could be pretty decent. And, you know, you think again about, like, the spamming, of course, with Cipher, right? Like, a lot of these walls, you know, can be spammed. I'm expecting somewhat the Odin to be played here, you know. Obviously, little trips or kill trips or whatever throughout the map, you know, could be pretty good on both A and B, right? I think that both could have setups that, you know, you really could fry people with, you know, even if it's just, you know, stuff like that and sitting in heaven, you know, like a kind of Haven A setup, right? Like raining death from above, you know. There's a ton of different things that you could do. You can put trips on the railroad tracks, by the way. You know, across the map. You know, these kind of go all the way across the map. So, yeah, I think Cipher again will be a pretty decent option. Another agent that I did decently like also is Deadlock. I think that, you know, in the kind of tighter areas of the map, you know, which there are a few, like A-Link, like in here towards Elbow, you know, maybe for, you know, post plants and stuff towards B backside as well, or somewhat on the B site itself. You know, these sonic sensors, you know, could be pretty decent, right? Like, they could be okay. You know, you've got obviously the wall. I mean, you can throw it through there and do something like that if you wanted to, right? Like, again, some of the walls are going to be pretty good. As I say, sensors in here are going to be decent as well. I think Deadlock is a pretty decent option. Again, early grav nets, you know, in towards both mains are going to be pretty good. And, yeah, Deadlock, I think, will be a decent option if that's the direction you want to go. Okay, now let's come to Killjoy. And when it comes to Killjoy, so it's not that Killjoy is a bad option on this map. It's funny. This map is kind of just like a reflection, I think, of where Killjoy overall is right now, which is that I think that Vice and Cipher are probably just a little bit better. It's not that Killjoy is bad. You know, particularly like nano swarms in here as well. One thing that I noticed, you know, it's pretty good, right? These nano swarms here, you know, they do still hit you as you're running through here, but it's actually not that clear, maybe, you know, that you are fully getting hit. So, you know, little nano swarms down here, if you are playing Killjoy, could be, you know, quite toxic to play against. Yeah, I just think that there's probably slightly better options with Cipher and Vice. When it comes to Sage, I think it's true every map of Sage, right? The early on Sage will probably be pretty good because it'll help you simplify the map and it'll help you just, you know, do very basic things. If you're wondering, if you're Paper Rex and you're wondering, then yes, you can do a Sage wall on this box and get your Omen to TP on it, and they will be able to see down there. If you are wondering, Paper Rex, if you're watching this, Alex, then just know that yes, this is possible. And then finally, let's finish with Vice. And when it comes to Vice, I think Vice is just pretty good. The map is kind of A-skewed, if you like, right? Like, it's going to be harder for you to, you know, push all the way through this and do a B split, you know, and it's going to be harder to take B main than it is just, you know, doing an A split, going through A main and kind of coming through the first part of mid here. So for that reason, I think your Sentinel, or certainly someone, is going to get left with, you know, hey, you're going to have to defend this site, right? You're just going to have to defend this site on your own for a bit and be asked to hold it down. And I think, obviously, Vice is going to be very good at that, right? Like, the fact that you can do, you know, multiple walls here that, you know, could be a bit deeper to make it harder for them to actually, you know, kind of trip them, right? By doing the wall a little bit deeper like this one. You know, that could cause some problems as well. So I think that Vice, and again, obviously with the flash, again, you've got the kind of access to verticality, so you could, you know, put this flash in a lot of different positions potentially as well, right? Like, I think that Vice will be, again, pretty good. So I think that those four, the Omen, Viper, Fade, Yoru, I would pick quite solidly on this map. And then the fifth, I think, is kind of up to whatever playstyle you want to go with, and there's a lot of decent options that you could potentially go with there.